Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here on a Wednesday evening in Scotland, capital of the world, and Lord of the universe, etc., because that's what Scotland is. Anyway, welcome. I hope everybody is doing well. There's only a small little gathering tonight, but that's okay. We'll get through it. We'll survive. We always do. We're pretty good at this. So, if you are new to the show, then please do say hello in the chat. Now, in order to be able to do that, you need to subscribe. So please hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell as well so you don't miss a thing that comes up on this channel. I try and post content as regularly as I can. I do this show on Wednesdays and I also do another one on Sundays, so you at least get two things a week from me. This Wednesday night show is most oftentimes over on Jonny Gibe's channel. However, whilst he is dealing with some family issues, some quite serious family issues actually, I am basically hosting it on my own for the time being. I'm not sure how long that's going to last, but for the time being, certainly I'm going to be hosting it pretty much all the time on my own. And that's okay. I'm fine with that. You know, I miss Jonny's company. I miss the banter that he and I have, but we hope to have normal service with Songwriting Simplified restored as soon as we possibly can. In the meantime, our thoughts and our prayers are with Jonny and his family as they go through this really rather difficult time. So I'm not going to go into details. Some of you know the details, some of you don't. But it would be a good thing, I think, if we respect Jonny's privacy and respect his family's privacy as well at this time. And when Jonny is ready to kind of talk about what's going on, I'm sure he will do, because, you know, he's a fairly open guy. And certainly with his audience, he's a pretty open guy. So I think we just kind of need to give him time, to be honest, to kind of go through what they're going through privately. So please respect that. I would appreciate it. Jonny and I are very close friends. We've been very close friends for almost 10 years. And I really value him and what he does and what he's done for the Presonus community as a Presonus employee. I can speak on behalf of the company, and I can say, without doubt, Jonny's contribution to what we do as a company and how we integrate with our customers is extraordinary. He has had a very, very powerful impact. And long may that continue, as far as I'm concerned personally, and, you know, on Presonus' behalf as well. Long may that continue, and I'm sure it will. So now that we've got that out of the way, welcome everybody. We have Billy Morgan here, we have Sean Aaron, we have Dwayne, we have John Hawk, we have Guy LaBelle from Longueuil, Quebec. And who else do we have? We have John Lake here as well. We have Mike from Music to Motion. We have Burlap Studios. We have Don Oliver. We have DDD Entertainment here as well. Long time no see to you. Welcome back. Very glad to see you back here. Welcome. Really glad to see you. And we also have Harley Bob here as well, which is pretty cool indeed. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the gathering. And Mark Holly's here as well. He just said hi. So, yeah, if you're new and you've not been to Songwriting Simplified before and you're just wondering kind of what this is all about, this community is one of the best communities that there is on YouTube. And it extends all over social media as well. All the people that you see here are very familiar. They are all very good friends of mine, and they will treat you very, very nicely. Please do come and say hello in the chat. So please subscribe to the channel. You have to wait a few minutes, and then the chat will be unlocked, and you can say hello. And I would love to reach out to you live on the show if you are watching for the first time. So please do say hello and let us know where you're from. Anime says hello from Virginia Beach, and I think you're one of my new ones, which is awesome. So welcome to you. I'm very glad you're here. And basically what goes on this show is this is an opportunity for all of you guys to ask me your questions about songwriting, about composing, arranging, music theory, and pretty much everything to do with making a song work, making it happen. And, kind of even before we get to the recording and production phase, just getting the song together and also working on other people's songs as well from an arranging point of view. I do a lot of arranging professionally and certainly have done over the years. I write for other artists as well. So over the years, I have kept myself very busy with songwriting for other artists and arranging for other artists as well. Plus, I write my own songs. I arrange my own songs. I have a couple of albums and a couple of EPs out that I've done over the last 30 or 40 years or so. So that's kind of my background. I have multiple qualifications in music and musicology to degree and postgraduate degree level. So that's a little bit about my background for those of you that are new to the show and you don't know. So feel free to post your questions in the chat and let's get this show going. Otherwise, it is going to be an all-time short show. And that would not be good. I don't like doing short shows. I like doing a full hour. So get your questions in. And let's get the show on the road. So I forgot to set this up so that you get just piano sound. There we go. There we go. Should have a nice piano sound. Mike says, how about coming up with a chord progression tonight and send it to me to share so we can start the EDM project that you can then jazz up? Well, see, I don't really know kind of the harmonic language of EDM. I don't know how rich it is or how complex it is. I like, personally, my personal preference is for really complex and dense harmonic textures, but, that's kind of not everybody's thing. And I'm not really familiar enough with EDM, which is why, Mike, I wanted to reach out to you and get involved in collaborating on this kind of thing with you, because that's kind of your wheelhouse. You kind of know what, how that music works, whereas I really don't. But I thought it would be nice if you and I could bring the two things that we have experience in and bring them together and see if we can kind of meet in the middle. Perhaps really for me, I would like to learn a lot more about how to write in that style, write in that genre, arrange in that genre, and, produce in that genre, because I know really very, very little about it. I've played, my only real experience really with it is back in 2003, I got hired by a record producer to play on a drum and bass record. And they basically called me and they said, we've got these tracks and we know there's something missing. There's a big gap in the songs and we don't really know what to put in there, except we want it to be keyboards. And so basically I said, well, kind of, give me some flavor, give me some idea of what it's about. So they sent me some demos and they said, this is kind of what the vibe of it. And the more I listened to what they were doing, the more I was beginning to hear elements of kind of mid to late 70s kind of funk music in my mind. That's kind of the music that I really, really like anyway, but that's kind of what I was beginning to hear that might work. So I spent a while just jamming over their tunes, and I said, let me know when you're ready to record, and I will bring in my Fender Rhodes Mark II electric piano, and I'll bring a couple of other keyboards as well. And so I did that. I brought them all in, and we set them up, and they said, so what do you want me to do? And they said, just kind of just play over the tracks. And so I did. They gave me no guidance. They gave me no instruction as to what key it was in or anything like that. They just gave me tempos. And they said, just play something. And so I was only supposed to be on one track. I ended up being on the entire record. And then they called me back in to do a second record about a year later. So I ended up kind of getting into a whole world of music that I didn't really know existed. Just by basically playing kind of jazz-orientated electric pianos and synthesizers and keyboards with their kind of drum and bass thing, and it sounded great. And the two records actually did extremely well, and were well received on the dance floors, which is kind of the important thing. So that really is my only experience with EDM at all, and really it was just me playing what I do on top of these grooves, to be honest. So okay, Mike says 4 chords. A minor, F, G, C, for example, would be a good start. I can arpeggio that with cool synth sounds. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so F, G, and C, for example. So in that order. Okay, so we can do this on piano, or we can switch over to some Fender Rhodes if you want something a little bit cooler sounding. So which is really just chords 4, 5, and 1, right? Have you got an A minor in there? Oh, you got an A minor in there. Okay, I didn't see that. So something like that. Maybe something like that might kind of do it. Yeah, maybe with kind of like something like a 4 to the floor kind of a groove. That's kind of what I was hearing in my head there, with something a little bit more 4 to the floor. Mike says, I'll lay something down with those chords to start and let you run with it until you want to hand it back and forth. Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, so maybe if we get like a nice little 4 to the floor kind of thing going, something medium-ish tempo, maybe something that's about 120 BPM, maybe a little bit north of that. If you want to be a little bit faster, we can do that. And then I can be as rhythmic as you want. How rhythmic do you want me to be? Do you want me to be very syncopated, or, quite chill, laid back like that? Or, how harmonically complex can I go? Can I really go for it? I mean, I did slip in the odd E7 sharp 9 there to get me to the A minor again. You know, I can do that. 120, okay, yeah, we can do 120. A little bit of 4 to the floor. You know. Distorting a bit. I can turn it down a bit. I think I'm distorting. Hang on. Something a bit more like that. Yes, I was clipping a bit. Yeah, I realized that the volume control knob was actually cranked on this. I don't know why it was set like that, but there we go. I think I've turned it down. I'll send you a starter track and you do your thing. Cool. That's what I like to hear, Mike. That would be perfect. A starter track just to kind of get me kind of going. And then I can kind of just drop something on top of what you've got. That would be cool. All right, so good question. I like it. Anyone else got any questions? If you wanted to know kind of what I was doing, I actually changed it up a little bit. And I went from kind of A minor. What I was doing was the A minor, F, G, C. And then I changed it up a little bit. I kind of thought the D minor 9 went better than the F. So... and then G, and then I did this little turnaround in the middle to get back to the A minor. I went from here, I went, that's kind of like a B7 sharp 5, E7 sharp 9, and then a little B flat 7 thrown in to make it just a little bit more, well, just another passing chord basically. I could do this. Which is kind of like a 2-5-1 in A minor, although I'm using the B minor rather than, I should be doing this. The half diminished to E7 flat 9. Oops. You'll have to send me your chords then, but I can do it that way too. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I'll give you the skinny again. So I'm basically going A minor, D minor, G7 to C major 7, and then back round. And you can just keep it that simple. And then, you know, the cool thing about that is if we keep it that simple, then, you know, I can interpolate any other kind of substitute chords in between it, and they will still fit over that basic set of chord changes. So not too much of a variation on what you're doing. A minor, D minor, G7, C major 7. And then, you know, the only other thing of every now and then, let's just stick in this E7 chord as a chord 5. Mike says, am I the only one chatting? Yes, you kind of are at the moment. Someone mute Mike. That's funny. Secret Squirrel is here. He says, good evening. Good evening to you, my friend. I've just spilt my tea, which is not very clever. So yeah, so I like that because essentially what we're doing harmonically is we're doing a 6, 2, 5, 1 with a chord 3. If we were to say that this is in C major, which it really isn't, it's more likely in A minor. So we would call this 1, 4, 7, I suppose, 5. But, you know, it's kind of hovering somewhere between A minor and C major. So I'm inclined to believe that this is in C major rather than A minor. So we've got chord 6, chord 2, chord 5, chord 1, chord 3. So basically it's just like a 3-6-2-5-1 turnaround, which is cool because improvising on those is very, very straightforward. Because you can either use C pentatonic scale, which is, or, you know, A blues would fit as well. You can use the full straight ahead C major scale. All of that will fit. Aeolian mode will fit. And, you know, you can use, you know, chromatic passing notes, chromatic enclosures, all of that kind of stuff will fit as well. Let's see. Any questions? I'm not seeing any questions because this might be a short show if there are no more questions. But yeah, I like this idea. I like this idea. But like I said, I know so little about EDM. Really, if I want to do anything that's kind of vaguely dance orientated, in Studio One, I know there's a whole bunch of kind of EDM style loops that I can rely upon. I can just drag them in. I can drag in what I feel sounds right, and then I can dub, you know, kind of what I do. Give me a time limit. How about 15 minutes from now? I'm kidding. Where are we? We are at the end of October. How about we make this kind of the end of November? So give ourselves like 4 weeks. You could, Mike, but I'm absolutely deadbeat. I'm probably going straight to bed after this. So, but yeah, by all means, kind of whack something out and send it to me for sure. All right, Secret Squirrel's got a question. He says, as I look to the upgrade to version 6, he says, when adding lyrics, can it be printed out over... Can it be printed out over tabs / notes / other of chord tracks, etc.? There is a lyrics display. I can show you that. I need to go start page... I need to get my song open that does use the lyrics track. All right, so lyrics track. All right, so at the top here is the lyrics track, and it kind of looks like it's all squished up, but that's okay. We can go to View, Lyrics Display, and there it is. So this is very, very cool. Now, if I were to have an instrument track, then I could make that show up on the instrument track. If I was to close this, I don't have an instrument track in this song because everything is just real instruments. So I don't. But let's just say, for argument's sake, we were to stick Mai Tai in here, and we were to have some kind of Mai Tai event that kind of went on throughout the song. I can double click that baby and I can hit this guy, and then I can go global, and even on this instrument track, I don't think you see it in the score editor though, unless you've actually got lyrics written into the notation. But you can stick in lyrics in here. It's pretty easy to do. It's been a while since I've done this. So you know, I can stick in notes here. And then I can I can't remember how to do this. I did this for my lyrics track video, and I can't remember how to enter lyrics under. I think you have to do it in the note editor. I think that's probably where I'm going wrong. So I can go here, I can go this is a song. So if I do it in this lyrics track here, and then if I go over to the score editor, it now appears in the notation. So I can have the notation here, here, and of course in the global lyrics display view. So if I go back to global, it's got all of my lyrics for my song that I've already brought in. But notice how I can have two completely separate lyrics. So I've got, these are my main lyrics, and then these are the ones I have just written into this instrument part here. So you can do either. You can have both, which is ridiculous, but you can. And you can switch between the two. So here's my main lyrics for this whole song. And the cool thing is, when I play this song, if I play from just before the beginning of verse 1. When everything's against me, my back against the wall, holding all the words, cards I feel 2 feet tall. You see how when a line is done, it goes gray, and then the line that you are on or should be about to sing is blue, and then the next one to come is white. And this will scroll by itself. You don't need to touch it. You don't need to go and kind of mouse it to scroll to the next verse. It will do it by itself. So it really is very, very cool. All right, so I hope that helps answer that question. And I'm going to remove this instrument because I don't need it. So I hope that answers that question. So it does appear in the score editor, it appears in the note editor, and also in the global lyrics track as well. I'd be interested to see if lyrics can be shared to the notation side to print and share music with lyrics and chorus band learning. Yes, it can. Yes, it absolutely can. You can you can print off all of that if you want to. And the lyrics will show in the score. So if you're doing the notation and you want it, you want to print off the notation with lyrics underneath, like a traditional kind of song lead sheet, you can absolutely do that. You just write it into the note editor. and then it will appear as you want it to appear in the score editor, and you can move things about. You can finesse exactly where they fall, and then you can print straight from the score editor. So that will work. You can also send to Notion. So if you've got instrument tracks in your song and you've got lyrics, you can send the whole lot to Notion. And also including sending to Notion Mobile as well, the new Notion app that's just been launched in the last 10 days or so. So you can send all of that to the new Notion Mobile, and you can adjust there, you can print, you can do whatever you want. But yeah, it's pretty cool, it's pretty easy, it's pretty straightforward. It's one of the real plus points of the lyrics track is how wonderfully actually thought through it is when they were developing this. It's done with the songwriter in mind, the performer in mind as well, you know. So they've thought about it from both points of view, which is very, very exciting because it means that singer-songwriters now have something that they can have ownership of from inside of Studio One, which is great because, you know, maybe the last few updates, singer-songwriters might feel that they have been left out a wee bit. Because, you know, a lot of the updates are fixed on, have been kind of fixed on features for mixing, features for mastering, you know, EDM updates with the new instruments and stuff that came in Studio One 4. And then Studio One 5 was kind of much more geared towards mixing, and 5.5 was geared entirely towards some very, very belated updates for the project page for mastering engineers. So now kind of for me, Studio One 6 feels much more like it's aimed towards singer-songwriters and composers for film, now that we've got the video track. And I'm sure, you know, hey, it's a little bit basic right now, but I'm sure there's a lot more mileage, and there's a lot more that can come for that in the future. You know, the possibilities are quite almost endless for what they can do with the video track going forward in the future. So it's pretty exciting what my friends and colleagues over in Hamburg are up to for Studio One. The future is extremely bright for Studio One, and I'm not just saying that because I work for the company, but because it really is. I mean, you know, I know that there was that whole Andy Mooney interview in a certain magazine publication that everybody took totally wrongly. They thought, hey, you know, maybe that's the end of Studio One. Maybe Studio One is just going to be stripped of all of its features. But now we have Studio One 6, and it's got a boatload of new features. Doesn't look like it's being stripped of features to me, particularly. So I think the future for Studio One is in safe hands. I think everybody can kind of sit back and relax and, you know, dream. Start thinking big. Start thinking about what would we like to see added to Studio One in the future. You know, where can we go with this? Where can we go with where we're at now with Studio One 6? There are so many features in it now compared to even just 5 or 6 years ago. You know, if we think back to when Studio One 3 was launched in May 2015, and we thought, hey, there's loads of features in here. Where can they possibly go next? And now here we are in Studio One 6.0. Where can we go next? What can we do for arrangers? What can we do for, you know, other musicians? Maybe musicians that are more involved in world music. Maybe microtonal music. How can we serve them? Get them into Studio One. So there's lots and lots of possibilities, I think. Let's see. I'm not seeing any more questions, I have to admit. So we may have to call the end of the show very, very shortly. Super Squirrel says, it seems that beyond my former career in the army, the hygiene practice... okay. All right. Yeah. And you're all talking about uh Billy Morgan trimming his beard. Yeah, well you may notice I've kind of trimmed mine a little bit as well. It'll take next to no time for it to grow back. All right, so any further questions, folks? We can talk about music theory, we can talk about harmony, we can talk about melody, we can talk about rhythm, we can talk about time signatures, key signatures, we can talk about all that kind of stuff. Getting from one key to another, we've covered quite a bit, but you know, it doesn't hurt to revisit such things. If that's something that's on your mind for us to do, then we can certainly do that. But yeah, get your questions in the chat, folks. We've got 18 people here, which is not bad. Would be nice if we had a few more, but you know, 18 is all right. I think the most we've ever had for a Songwriting Simplified, where it's been both me and Jonny, I think was 54, and I think that was when we did the Studio One 4 launch or the Studio One 5 launch. I can't quite remember which one it was. But yeah, we had like 50 something people there. Why are parallel fifths evil? Parallel fifths are not actually regarded as evil. What I think you're thinking of is this, the tritone, which for many years was regarded as an incredibly dissonant interval. For many years. That interval was regarded as very, very dissonant, very discordant, and quite unpleasant to the ear. Now, there is a myth surrounding the tritone that the Council of Trent in, I think, 1560 something outlawed this particular interval and banned it, made it an interval that should not be in any sacred music. That didn't actually happen. It was never banned by the church. And I'll tell you why it was never banned. Because if it was banned by the church, Bach would never have been known universally as a composer and as a performer and as a great musician. We would never have ever heard of Johann Sebastian Bach, and he would never have changed the course of music at all. He likely would have been a priest, and nobody would ever heard of him. However, because that interval was never banned, it features very heavily in Johann Sebastian Bach's music, because Johann Sebastian Bach was one of the first composers to make use of dominant seventh chords. You know, if we take a D chord and we put a minor third on the top, we get the interval of a seventh. But if I take everything away, so if I take away the fifth, just leaving the root, the third, and the seventh, to me and you, that sounds fine. But we have that tritone in there. It's absolutely loaded with tension, but it leads to here. You get resolution when you resolve it up a fifth. So we get D7, G. So he would do lots of passages of modulations, like and things like that. Basically just going around the cycle of fifths using dominant seventh chords like that. Just basically chord 5 to chord 1. Parallel fifths are a slightly different thing, and they're not regarded as evil so much as Bach had a whole bunch of rules for harmony that he personally himself adhered to, mostly. I have to say mostly because even after he set all of these rules for what we would call chorale style harmony, he would break his own rules in certain circumstances. But what are parallel fifths? Parallel fifths are where you have an interval of a fifth that moves by step. Okay? So if you have internal harmony within a set of chords, where you have that movement there, it's regarded as kind of weak harmony to have parallel fifths. So an example would be because I have parallel fifths. You can also not have parallel parallel octaves are just as bad, by the way. That's what I've got going on at the bottom. I've got parallel octaves there, but guess what else I've got? I've got parallel fifths as well. Which is why that is not a very strong set of chord changes. C, D, E, you've got parallel octaves and parallel fifths. So they kind of weaken the harmony. So basically, the argument that Bach made was avoid parallel octaves where you have an interval of an octave that moves together, or the interval of a fifth that moves together. So when you're writing 4 parts chorale harmony for a choir, for a chorale, which is a style of music very popular in the Baroque period for choral work, you had to make sure that the internal movement of each of the parts, your 4 parts, your soprano, your alto, your tenor, your bass, you had to make sure that there are no parallel octaves between any of the parts and no parallel fifths between any of the parts moving together. So that's what that was all about. It's a little bit complicated. But yeah. It's a little bit complicated, but it's kind of there. Rules became guidelines, became options, became dares. Yes, in some cases that's true. But in other cases, actually, what were rules became something else. They became, see, when you've got rules, when you've got boundaries in place, sometimes boundaries can allow for incredible creativity. I'll give you an example. So we get to the end of the Baroque period, and there is a young child by the name of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who is a big fan of Handel, George Frederick Handel. Handel was one of these composers that grew up, obviously, in the Baroque period, with Baroque understanding of music, but had an eye and an ear to the future. He just couldn't hear it. He could hear it, but he couldn't write it. He couldn't play it. And then this child prodigy came along called Mozart, who not only could hear the music of the future, but he could write it and he could play it. He could play what he heard in his head. Most musicians couldn't do that. They couldn't apply their musical imagination, their future thought to the present. And still, that's the case for a lot of people today. But this is how music gets innovated. This is how music develops, is somebody thinks of a sound that's not been heard before, or a musical concept that's not been touched or developed before. And that's how you get different genres. And that's how you get musical geniuses who pop up. You get your Charlie Parkers, you get your Dizzy Gillespies, you get your John Coltrane's, you get your Jimi Hendrix's, you get your Miles Davis's, and they're pioneers because they develop music that hasn't been heard yet, and musical ideas that haven't been heard yet. But it all starts with, there are these rules. And then somebody goes, yes, these rules are great and all, but if I did this and this and this with those concepts, with those rules, we create something new. And that's what Mozart did. And so the classical period was born largely out of Mozart's developments harmonically, rhythmically, stylistically, and in terms of form and structure. He largely invented the symphony as we understand it. And so a lot of his harmonic style he gained from Handel. But he extended harmony to involve a lot more chromaticism. If you listen to any of Mozart's symphonies, you'll hear a lot of chromatic passing tones. You know, notes that don't belong to the scale, that sound a little bit outside. And so, you know, and of course he was, again, hinting at music to come. He was hinting at the music of the Romantic period and harmony of the Romantic period, but he couldn't play it yet. And then you have Beethoven, who could not only hear what Mozart was hearing, but he could write it and he could play it. And he took Mozart's ideas and ran with them. So that's kind of how things grow and develop in music. It's not just that there are rules that therefore can be broken. Yes, they can. They can be bent, they can be perturbed, but they can also be completely broken as well. But it starts off with creativity within a framework. So, you know, the symphony in the classical period, everything, I mean, just look at classical architecture. Everything is about form, neat structures, but everything is nice and neat and uniform. That's what classical architecture was. That's what classical music was. And then towards the end of that period, as you get into the beginning of the 19th century, you've got musicians like Beethoven who are pushing the boundaries harmonically. They are increasing the size of the orchestra. They are stretching out the symphonic framework, the framework of the symphony, massively, and expanding it to include different sounds, different textures, and expanding upon the form of the compositional style as well. So, I mean, that's all kind of classical music, but it has a lot of bearing on how popular and, you know, popular music, rock, jazz, blues, how all of those develop. Because, you know, music doesn't develop kind of in secrecy. It doesn't develop in a vacuum. You know, classical music developed in one particular way. But then if you, with your other hand, you were to take the development of popular music, rock, jazz, blues, R&B, gospel, all of those styles of music, they all developed in a very, very similar fashion. If you were to do a comparative study on the development of classical music, what we call broadly classical music, which includes, you know, medieval music, Baroque music, classical music, romantic music, post-romantic music, modern music. And then you take a look at jazz, where it starts with very, very simple kind of forms, and a little bit of syncopation, and maybe, you know, the odd here and there extension to a single triad or a dominant seventh chord, and then the introduction of some blue notes, and then from the introduction of some blue notes you get the Tin Pan Alley kind of chord changes, from which you get songs like I Got Rhythm and Cherokee and Honeysuckle Rose. Fantastic songs that were massive monster hits in the late 20s and early 30s. Charlie Parker hears I Got Rhythm and goes, hey, there is so much we can do with these set of chord changes. He hears Cherokee and the bebop movement is born, and suddenly music becomes a lot more chromatic, a lot more complex. And from there you get a reaction to all that complexity, and you get cool jazz with Miles Davis, simplifying everything, making things modal, getting rid of chord changes altogether and making things all about a scale, a mode. And then from that, you start getting developments like straightening the swing rhythm into more a straight eighth thing instead of ting, 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 making it more ting, 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 ting. And before you know it, you've got the beginnings of rock and roll. You know, Bill Haley and the Comets, you know, they were largely maybe one of the first kind of rock and roll bands, but guess what? They were all trained jazz musicians because they had to be. And so, you know, it develops, it grows. in much the same way classical music does. That's kind of what I was trying to say there, and I kind of got on my lecture soapbox there. Sorry about that. But I used to be a lecturer in music history, so there you go. I think Jimmy had a book of rules, but he burned it at Woodstock. Yeah, Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, there's a lot to say about Jimi Hendrix. And kind of what he was hearing with the guitar that nobody else was hearing was, that was musically possible. But I mean, Jimi Hendrix was very, very influenced by jazz tenor saxophone player John Coltrane. And then I think maybe in 1968, there was a meeting. It might have even been in 1969. I think it might have even been at Woodstock. Miles Davis, who was there, the jazz trumpet player, met Jimi Hendrix. And they started talking about making a record together. And I even believe that there were some early recording sessions. Nothing ever went down. Nothing ever went to press. So there was no record made because Jimmy died, sadly, before it could happen. But there was certainly some exploratory recording sessions where Miles had his band and brought Jimmy in, and they kind of jammed, and there was some experimentation that went on. Who knows what would have happened if you'd had a Miles Davis Jimi Hendrix record? Oh my word, that would have been extraordinary. But yeah, Hendrix was very much influenced by kind of avant-garde jazz. He had those kind of ideas in his mind about extending what was possible on the instrument, on the guitar, and extending what was, harmony, and introducing that into kind of rock music. Yeah, Jimmy was said to get into some big band. Yeah, he was. He was a big fan of the Duke Ellington band, actually, and also the Stan Kenton band. Stan Kenton was one of these guys who wanted to kind of take modern classical music and kind of fuse it with big band and jazz. And so, he did a lot of kind of fusing concepts from Schoenberg and Webern and Berg and bringing those into a big band kind of context, with actually a large degree of success, actually. And I think Hendrix listened to those. All right, so Super Squirrel he says, what makes a backbeat and not just a beat? Please explain the term. Okay, this might be one of those phrases that gets lost in translation, particularly if English is not your first language. And you'd be like, so why is it called the backbeat? Okay, so there are downbeats and there are upbeats. In a bar of 4/4, there are 2 downbeats and there are 2 upbeats. The downbeats are beat 1 and beat 3. And the reason why they are regarded as downbeats is because they are regarded as the strong beats in the measure, in the bar. The upbeats, beats 2 and 4, are regarded as the weaker beats in the bar. But those are the beats that get emphasized in popular music, as opposed to beats 1-3 that get emphasized in classical music. By and largely. I mean, I'm being very, very broad here, quite deliberately. So rock music has the snare drum on 2 and 4. If you listen to any funk record by the Brecker Brothers from, 1980 or 1981, or Tower of Power, or any funk band from that era, you'll hear the snare drum very loudly struck on beats 2 and 4. You'll hear it in rock music, you'll hear it in the music of The Who, you'll hear it in all sorts of music. The rock bands that you probably won't hear that backbeat quite so much is actually the Jimi Hendrix Experience, mostly because Mitch Mitchell was a jazz drummer that Jimmy really liked and brought him into his band. And so Mitch didn't actually play the beats 2 and 4 very often. They were there and they provided a sense of forward motion. Emphasizing the weak beat of a bar makes the music have a sense of forward motion, like it's being propelled, it's moving forward. Whereas if you emphasize beats 1 and 3, the music is kind of being held back. That's what it feels like rhythmically, which is why, you know, a drummer will emphasize beats 2 and 4 when he's playing a rock beat compared to beats 1 and 3. But I mean, the rock beat itself is kind of an extension of what you would get from a marching band, because the bass drum in a marching band is always on the downbeat and the snare drum notes are always on the upbeat, except in a marching context, the upbeats are weak. So the snare drum's not hit really quite so hard. It's that bass drum that's nice and big and strong. So yeah, so that's kind of where that idea of a backbeat comes from. It's just, you know, it's the backbeat because it's beats 2 and 4 rather than 1 and 3. So that's kind of what that means. Yeah, Hendrix was really into jazz and really into avant-garde jazz and really into avant-garde classical music. He was a big fan of Schoenberg and his 12-tone atonal kind of concepts and the whole idea of 12-note rows as well. He was into kind of exploring some of those, but had he lived longer, who knows where he would have gone with kind of fusing all of these classical, jazz, and rock concepts together. Who knows what he would have ended up with. But, I mean, the foundation for everything Jimi Hendrix is the blues, fundamentally. And it's the blues that's at the heart and the soul of every Jimi Hendrix record. And, you know, I am a Hendrix fan. I am a jazz musician. Jazz is my thing. It's what I grew up with. But, you know, I love Hendrix's music very much. All right, so we are at the hour. Thank you very much, everybody, for all of your questions. I didn't get to Burlap Studios' last question, where he asked, talk a bit about historical or cultural influences and pressures on music evolution. That would definitely be a subject for another show, for sure. So I will bear that one in mind. But thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Deer Creek, glad to see you here as well. And I will see you all on Sunday night for Sunday Night Live. But before we get to Sunday Night Live, on Friday, we have the Studio One meetup for UK and Ireland. So you don't have to be from the UK or Ireland to attend it. All you need to do is just join the Zoom call. And if you go to personas.com and you click on the events page, you will see the listing for the UK and Ireland meetup. And all you got to do is just follow the links to the Zoom call. And it starts at 8 p.m. UK time. So wherever you are in the world, work out what that time difference is for you. But for me, it's going to be 8 p.m. and we run for quite a while because usually we have a lot of people in and usually those people have a lot to talk about. So we will probably run for quite some time. So although it says it's 2 hours long, don't believe a word of that. It will usually run longer than that unless we've only got 3 people there, in which case it might be only 2 hours. But yes, Friday will be the UK Studio One meetup. Now, we are the current record holders for the longest Studio One meetup at, I think, 8 hours and 15 minutes. That was crazy. I don't anticipate setting another record, but we will see. It is Rich Cresswell's birthday today, he says as well, so get the ale in, folks. And Rich, if you are watching the replay, this is for you. You would appreciate the flat 9 there, Rich. Happy birthday, Rich. Have a good one. Enjoy it. Drink plenty. Oh, I could do it in the minor key. Why the hell not? Very dark. Anyway, there we go. Have a great one, Rich. Happy birthday, buddy. Hope you don't feel too ancient when you get to my age and Mike Johnson's age. You'll start feeling it. Trust me. Billy is so old he is young again. No, we love you, Billy. You're not that old. All right, guys. I will see you on Friday for the Studio One meetup for Personas, and after that, it will be Sunday Night Live back here on Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Time. All right, folks. I bid you all a very good night. Good night.